The good news is, well, there's actually not any good news. It's all bad news at this point. All right, you guys, it's the best kind of day here at Reignited. It's new project day. Today we've got a 2011 Ford F250. Supposedly has a bad injector in it. I'm not really sure. It might be something more serious. Did I buy a lemon? I don't know. We're gonna find out together. I hope you'll stay with me to find out. All right, so the story was with this guy when I bought this thing that he said had a bad injector and a bad injector hold down. So I drove down to take a look at the thing. There's only so much you can do on a cursory inspection. The vehicle was basically dead in the lot at the mechanic shop where he had taken it. His story was that he had just put a brand new turbo on the thing. He's been out of work since the pandemic, and therefore he was just plain out of money to put an injector in this thing to get it back going again. Well, you know the old saying that when it sounds like it's too good to be true, it probably is. Yeah, that's likely the case on this one. So I went ahead and inspected the truck. Tried to do the best external inspection that I could. The batteries were very low on charge, so it was very hard to get the engine to crank over. But I did a cursory visual inspection, looked underneath the truck, and kind of a bad sign was that there was oil basically coming out of all the seams of the exhaust. Now in my mind I thought, okay, well, if the turbo went bad, maybe it dumped a bunch of oil in the exhaust and maybe that's what I'm seeing there. Well, getting it back home, yeah, it kind of sounds like it's going to be a little bit worse than just a turbo. So I went ahead and charged up these batteries to a full charge, got them reinstalled, turned the key. I'm going to let you hear it now. Yeah, about that. Yeah, not a great sign. It definitely sounds like there's some internal engine damage happening there. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to pull the cab on this thing so I can then disassemble the engine and figure out exactly what kind of internal problems we're dealing with, whether or not it needs a whole new engine or not. Either way, I'm actually excited to be working on it because this is my first chance to work on a Ford 6.7 diesel. I work on the Dodge 6.7s all the time, but I've never touched a 6.7 Ford, even though my own personal vehicle is a 6.0 Ford that I've done a whole bunch of work to. Never had a chance to work on one of these. So either way, I'm looking at it as a positive. Hopefully we'll get some great content out of it for you guys. Now let's get into it, man. Nothing else to say. All right, so I spent about 2 hours on this thing, getting all this stuff out of there. I got the steering disconnected, the e-brake cable, the transmission cable, all of the coolant lines, the fan shroud assembly, battery boxes, all that stuff's out of the way. I'm pretty sure the cab's ready to come up now. Let's go ahead and start it out. Usually there'll be one small thing you miss, so just go slow and take it easy. All right, so the one thing I'm concerned about a little bit here is with the brush guard on the front of this thing. It's gonna be very, very close to the front grille assembly. I'm hoping that I can sneak it past it, but if not, maybe I can, roll the chassis forward or back just a little bit, just enough to gain the clearance. Worst comes to worst, I'll have to take the brush guard off. Not the end of the world, but certainly not something I'm looking forward to as well. Let's keep going. All right, so we've done it. We've got the cab off. Honestly, that was easier than I had expected it to be. Oftentimes, I thought that the 6.7 Ford looked overly complicated, the engine bay. There's a lot of stuff going on in there. But honestly, it all comes apart very simply. And there's a lot of coolant hoses, and there is a lot of coolant. I'm not sure exactly how much this thing holds, but I wouldn't be surprised if 5 or 6 gallons went into this thing. There's a lot of coolant in there, but honestly, it all was very simple, came apart very logically, wasn't that much more difficult than a 6.7 Dodge would be. So, and the cab actually comes off easier than a Dodge does. Now, this is the way that they put these trucks together from the factory. So when you're doing a major repair, like if I do have to do an engine replacement on this thing, this is absolutely the way to do it. You can pull apart the front assembly and do it out the front, but there's really no reason to do that. If the factory puts them together this way, they're designed to come apart this way. And that way it makes it so much easier. Everything's right here. I can get to everything. I'm not leaning over anything, which is a huge pain. So if you've got the capability, if you have a lift, this is absolutely the way to do a major project like this. All right. Now that we've got to this point, we're gonna go ahead and start tearing this thing down. The first thing I wanna do is I wanna go ahead and get this number 7 injector out of here and stick my bore scope down in there and see if I can see the piston, the cylinder walls, see if they're scored up or anything like that. Let's get into it. So Ford is the same as Dodge on these fuel lines. Technically, they are one-time use fuel lines. However, that's not strictly true. Generally, what they are concerned about is if somebody over tightens these, it can tend to mushroom the ball end of it, and then it has a leak, which of course on a diesel is certainly not a good thing because of the high pressures that they run. But in saying that, you don't always have to replace them. If you inspect them and they look to be in okay condition and you're able to cinch them back down and you're not getting any leaks, it's fine. Don't worry about it. You can reuse them. However, if you put it together and it is leaking even just a little bit, yeah, you're gonna have to replace the line at that point. Yeah, I'm looking at the ends of these lines and they look just fine. I'm not seeing any signs of over tightening or mushrooming at all. Injector's coming right out, which is a good sign, but also makes me wonder if somebody just recently took it out. Normally they'll put up a bit more of a fight than that. All right, well, not seeing any harsh damage to this injector. That's a good sign. All right, so I went ahead and pulled out all of the injectors. That way I would have zero compression on any of the cylinders so I could then spin the motor over and see how it felt. Bad news is I've got all of the injectors pulled out. I don't see any physical damage to the injectors, but I've got the injectors pulled out and there is no rotation of that crankshaft. So I'm suspecting we have some bottom end bearing issues with it. The good news is, well, there's actually not any good news. It's all bad news at this point. So I just got to continue tearing this thing down. I'm going to go ahead and pull the top end off, pull the cylinder heads off of there and do a visual inspection. But after that, it looks like I'm going to have to actually yank the whole engine out of there. What are you going to do? Let's move on. Alright guys, so that's as far as we're going to make it in this episode. I know we didn't really find the cause or solution yet. I still believe it's bottom end related at this point in time, but I still want to take off the cylinder heads and see if the cylinder walls are scored to see if we need a whole new short block or not. So I'm going to pull the cylinder heads off in the next episode. We'll inspect the bores, and if they look okay, we'll yank the engine out, flip it over, check out all the bearings on it. Perhaps they ran the engine dry of oil or something to that degree. I'm not certain, but we'll continue in the teardown next episode. We'll see you then.